The 1960s were a fever dream of color and creativity, where animation studios raced to invent new worlds every Saturday morning. But for every classic that survived the decades, there were others erased by time, censorship, or indifference. Some vanished overnight, pulled for being too strange or too honest. Tonight we dive deep into the shadows of nostalgia to uncover 20 more lost 60s cartoons that mysteriously disappeared from television. Number 20, The Astronaut Adventures, 1964. When The Astronaut Adventures first aired, it looked like harmless fun. A cheerful alien stranded on Earth, getting into slapstick mischief with his human friend. Kids adored the bright colors and goofy sound effects. But beneath the surface was something subversive. The aliens' confusion about borders, war, and bureaucracy mirrored the growing unease of Cold War America. Writers slipped clever jokes about politics and propaganda into the dialogue. By the 5th episode, executives started noticing. One line comparing Earth's leaders to galactic dictators drew angry letters from conservative groups. Soon, local stations refused to air it. Officially, it was canceled for low ratings, but insiders claimed government pressure silenced it. When the studio shut down years later, most film reels were tossed into storage and forgotten. In the early 2000s, a handful of copies surfaced in foreign archives, showing how its humor had mocked fear itself. The Astronaut Adventures became a ghost of television's cautious conscience, a reminder of how laughter can reveal what nations try to hide. Number 19, Jonny Quest, 1964. When Jonny Quest hit television in 1964, it was unlike anything children had ever seen. Gone were the slapstick animals and talking toys. This was adventure with grit. The series followed young Johnny, his scientist father, Dr. Quest, bodyguard Race Bannon, and friend Heiji as they raced across jungles, deserts, and secret laboratories, battling spies, monsters, and ancient mysteries. Its blend of pulp fiction excitement and Cold War realism thrilled audiences but terrified sponsors. Hanna-Barbera poured an unprecedented budget into the show, using stylized realism inspired by comic book art and even authentic military designs. That ambition became its downfall. Each episode cost nearly double the average cartoon, and parents' groups complained that its violence was too intense for children. After just one season, Jonny Quest was canceled despite strong ratings. For decades, original negatives vanished into studio vaults, surviving only through faded VHS recordings. Yet the show's influence never died. It inspired generations of action animation, from the real adventures of Jonny Quest to the Venture Brothers. What television buried as too bold, history reclaimed as revolutionary. Number 18, Rocket Robin Hood, 1966. Rocket Robin Hood turned medieval legend into space-age mayhem. With rocket bows, laser swords, and psychedelic backdrops, it told of outlaws stealing from cosmic tyrants. For kids, it was wild escapism. For critics, it was pure chaos. The clunky animation and recycled footage made it infamous but unforgettable. Behind the laughter, production was collapsing. Budgets ran dry, and animators reused entire scenes to meet deadlines. When the studio entered financial trouble after a tax dispute, dozens of episodes were seized as collateral and never seen again. When reruns suddenly vanished across Canada, and the United States, fans suspected censorship. Some believed broadcasters objected to its violent tone, while others blamed unpaid licensing fees. Whatever the truth, Rocket Robin Hood faded into the void, leaving behind legends of its lost episodes, whispered among collectors. Today it stands as a folktale within television history, proof that even flawed art can outlive the corporations that tried to bury it. Number 17, Touche Turtle and Dum Dum, 1962. This little-known cartoon by Hanna-Barbera Productions aired as part of the new Hanna-Barbera cartoon series from September 3rd, 1962 to August 26, 1963. On the surface, it seemed harmless, a swashbuckling turtle hero, Touche, and his dim-witted sheepdog sidekick, Dum Dum, battling villains from Old West to medieval times. But look closer. The show carried an undercurrent of absurd heroism and commentary on authority and service. After its single season, very little of it was rerun, and today it's rarely included in standard retro cartoon anthologies. Archives list it, but fans say the original masters are incomplete, and much of the show is only available via scattered bootlegs. For your list of lost 60s cartoons, Touche Turtle and Dum Dum fits perfectly a show that existed, had creative ambition, but slipped quietly out of circulation. Number 16, Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1967. Filmation's Journey to the Center of the Earth debuted in the fall of 1967, riding on the success of the 1959 film. It promised high adventure. Professor Lindenbrook, his niece Cindy, and guide Alec McEwen, exploring subterranean worlds while escaping the villainous Count Sacknussem. But under the pulp excitement lay an unease reflective of its time technology versus nature, discovery versus destruction. The show's tone was darker than typical Saturday morning fare. Episodes showed collapsing ecosystems, ancient civilizations wiped out by human greed, and science that endangered rather than enlightened. Parents complained it was too frightening. Production struggled under low budgets and constant pressure to simplify its scripts. When Filmation shifted focus to lighter properties, the network shelved Journey to the Center of the Earth after just one season. Master negatives were later misplaced in a vault transfer, leaving only scattered copies in private archives. Today, restoration groups have salvaged a few surviving prints, revealing stunning artwork and surprisingly mature storytelling. Journey to the Center of the Earth wasn't just adventure, it was a warning that progress without conscience can hollow the world beneath our feet. Number 15. The Adventures of Beany and Cecil, 1962. The Adventures of Beany and Cecil began as a cheerful nautical cartoon about a boy named Beany and his friendly sea serpent companion, Cecil. On the surface, it looked like harmless fun, full of slapstick and catchy tunes. But beneath its waves, creator Bob Clampett filled every episode with thinly veiled satire aimed at politics, corporate greed, and celebrity culture. Clampett had been part of the early Warner Brothers animation circle and knew how to slip coded jokes past censors. One villain was a scheming tycoon named Dishonest John, whose voice and mannerisms closely resembled a well-known television mogul. Another story mocked Cold War paranoia when an island of robots declared independence from human rule. Networks began receiving letters from powerful advertisers claiming the show was turning children against authority. Despite strong ratings, the show abruptly disappeared after 2 seasons. The official explanation blamed scheduling conflicts, but insiders revealed that ABC's sponsors had threatened to pull funding if the satire continued. Years later, many original film reels were discovered to be missing or badly damaged. Today, Beany and Cecil survive only in fragments and faded prints, reminding viewers how even a cheerful sea serpent could be silenced for being too clever. In a decade defined by fear and conformity, it dared to laugh at the powerful and paid the price. Number 14. The King and Odie Show, 1963. The King and Odie Show followed a dim-witted monarch and his loyal dog trying to govern a tiny animated kingdom that constantly fell apart. Viewers saw it as simple comedy, but writers filled it with allegories about bureaucracy and the absurdity of politics. Each episode began with King Leonardo's noble speech collapsing into chaos as his decisions ruined everything. Behind the scenes, tensions brewed between the creative team and studio executives. The writers wanted sharp social commentary. The sponsors wanted safe humor. By mid-season, scripts mocking propaganda and corporate meddling caused nervous meetings. One infamous episode depicted an ambassador who brainwashed citizens with jingles, an obvious jab at advertising itself. That episode never aired. When the show was quietly pulled from syndication in 1964, the studio claimed declining interest. Yet some insiders insisted the network buried it to avoid offending sponsors linked to major corporations. The final 6 scripts were shredded after a vault fire destroyed backup prints. Decades later, animation historians uncovered storyboard fragments showing the lost episodes were more sophisticated than anyone guessed. The King and Odie Show became one of television's strangest tragedies, a children's cartoon that outsmarted its masters and vanished before audiences could realize how daring it really was. Number 13. The Space Cadets, 1966. The Space Cadets blasted onto screens as a colorful adventure about 4 children exploring the galaxy with their trusty dog Scooter. It was meant to inspire curiosity about space exploration, but something odd happened. The show's humor grew increasingly dark. Villains weren't aliens. They were greedy corporations mining asteroids and exploiting planets. Parents began to notice. Hanna-Barbera had produced the series quickly to capitalize on the space race craze, but production chaos followed. A new sponsor wanted to insert product mascots into the animation, while writers protested. Episodes mocking consumerism mysteriously vanished after test screenings. When the series aired in syndication, most episodes were edited down from 7 minutes to barely 3. For decades, fans believed the originals were destroyed. In the 1980s, collectors discovered heavily degraded film reels labeled do not broadcast. They contained the full uncut versions, complete with biting commentary about waste and greed. The Space Cadets never received an official restoration. Its remaining footage floats online in poor quality bootlegs, but even through scratches and static, the message is clear. The show wasn't just about space, it was about humanity's habit of turning discovery into exploitation. It was optimism turned rebellion, and television wasn't ready to hear that from a cartoon. Number 12. Colonel Bleep, 1957 to 1960. Colonel Bleep was America's first color cartoon for television. A bright explosion of atomic age optimism. Set on the planet Futura, it followed a cosmic hero keeping peace in the universe with his robot sidekick, Squeak, and a caveman named Scratch. To children, it was dazzling. To adults, it was propaganda disguised as fun. Every episode preached morality through science and patriotism through heroism. But by the early 60s, as fears of nuclear war grew, networks grew uneasy. Critics claimed its slogans glorified atomic energy, while ignoring its danger. Some episodes were reportedly pulled after parents complained about radiation jokes and weapon imagery. Then, disaster struck. The studio's storage facility was sold, and hundreds of master reels were dumped. Only a handful survived, thanks to a collector who rescued them from a landfill. Those surviving reels later revealed subtle shifts in tone, episodes quietly questioning blind faith in progress. Colonel Bleep's disappearance became symbolic of the very anxiety it once celebrated. It stood for the hope and hubris of the atomic age, an era that promised tomorrow but feared it too. Today it exists only in fragments glowing like cosmic fossils from a vanished generation of dreamers and believers. Number 11. Lioneus the Lionhearted, 1964. Lioneus the Lionhearted roared onto television with sponsorship from a cereal company. Each episode promoted cheerful mascots like Sugar Bear and Rory Raccoon. Children adored the catchy songs and whimsical stories. Yet, the Federal Communications Commission saw something sinister. Critics accused the show of blurring the line between entertainment and advertising by directly marketing to children during its broadcast. When new regulations arrived in 1969, banning shows tied to food promotion, Lioneus was abruptly canceled. But controversy ran deeper. Behind closed doors, animators admitted the scripts had begun satirizing corporate greed itself. One unbroadcast episode allegedly mocked cereal executives, turning imagination into profit. When the series ended, most prints were locked away by the sponsor company to avoid legal disputes. Animators later claimed that storyboards and audio masters were quietly destroyed. Fans spent decades hunting lost footage until a few restored segments resurfaced online. Lioneus the Lionhearted became more than a lost cartoon. It became a cautionary tale about the price of commercial creativity. It showed how corporate control could devour art from within, leaving behind only echoes of laughter and jingles trapped in memory. Number 10. The Mighty Hercules, 1963. The Mighty Hercules looked like a standard heroic fantasy cartoon, but it carried deeper ambition. Set in ancient Greece, it followed Hercules as he battled monsters and tyrants while teaching moral lessons to young audiences. Yet beneath the mythology lay a thinly veiled reflection of world politics. Each villain symbolized a different form of corruption or dictatorship, and the hero's struggles mirrored the chaos of the Cold War era. The production faced severe financial pressure. Artists reused sequences, while sound engineers built entire episodes from recycled audio. Despite its low budget, the show attracted loyal viewers who saw meaning in its moral storytelling. That attention, however, made sponsors nervous. A storyline about a false prophet manipulating citizens to follow blind faith caused uproar. Religious groups protested, and networks quietly removed the offending episode from syndication. When production ended, the master reels were left in a warehouse that later burned down under mysterious circumstances. Few believed the fire was accidental. Surviving prints turned up years later, missing keyframes, as if someone had deliberately edited out particular scenes. The Mighty Hercules became legend among animation historians, not for its hero, but for the mystery that surrounded his fall. It showed how even myth could become dangerous when truth hid inside allegory. Number 9. QT Hush, 1960. QT Hush was one of television's earliest detective cartoons. The series followed a trenchcoat-wearing, private eye-solving absurd cases in a surreal city filled with double agents and hypnotic gadgets. Kids enjoyed its humor, but adults noticed something else. Each episode parodied government surveillance and paranoia, years before such topics became common conversation. The network received anonymous complaints accusing the creators of promoting anti-establishment sentiment. Production meetings turned hostile as sponsors demanded safer stories. When the writers refused to tone down the satire, management canceled the show mid-season. Most original reels were taped over to save storage space. Decades later, A single uncut episode surfaced from a private collection, revealing surprisingly mature themes about privacy and truth. The discovery reignited interest among animation historians, who saw QT Hush as a forgotten milestone in American satire. Its visual style inspired later cult classics, yet few remember its name. QT Hush became a phantom detective haunting the archives of lost television. In its world, laughter uncovered secrets, and that made it dangerous. Number 8. Milton the Monster, 1965. Milton the Monster began as a gentle parody of gothic horror. Created by Hal Seeger, the show featured a kind-hearted creature who lived in a haunted mansion and tried to fit into society. What started as harmless comedy slowly evolved into biting social commentary about fear, conformity, and identity. By mid-season, episodes depicted townspeople turning against Milton simply for being different. Critics praised its bravery, but parents complained that it was too grim for children. Religious groups labeled it subversive, claiming it mocked traditional values. The backlash grew until networks decided to end the series after only one full season. Behind the scenes, animators recalled that several unbroadcast episodes contained darker endings, where Milton questioned whether humanity was more monstrous than he was. Those reels vanished when the studio filed for bankruptcy. Only fragments survive, showing half-finished storyboards and rough animation. Milton the Monster remains one of the most misunderstood creations of the 60s. It turned horror into empathy and humor into rebellion, and in doing so, frightened the very people it hoped to enlighten. Number 7. Clutch Cargo, 1959 to 1960. Clutch Cargo became infamous for its bizarre use of real human lips superimposed over static drawings through a technique called synchro vox. At first, audiences found it fascinating, then unsettling. The show told pulp adventure stories about a fearless pilot traveling across dangerous lands, but its visuals created an eerie effect that some called hypnotic. Rumors spread that government agencies used the show to test subliminal broadcasting. Although no proof ever surfaced, the gossip was enough to make sponsors withdraw support. Production halted suddenly, and episodes vanished from circulation. Years later, technicians discovered reels labeled for destruction, with notes about experimental synchronization technology. Animation historians argue that Clutch Cargo's disappearance had less to do with fear and more to do with embarrassment. Networks wanted to erase what they saw as a failed experiment. Yet the show's uncanny look later influenced avant-garde artists who saw beauty in its mistakes. Clutch Cargo disappeared into myth, but its strange faces still haunt pop culture. It was the first television cartoon to blur the line between living and drawn worlds, and perhaps that blurred line was too unsettling for its time. Number 6. The Beagles, 1966. The Beagles capitalized on Beatlemania, but twisted it through parody. The animated duo, Stringer and Tubby, were talking dogs who became pop stars, singing upbeat tunes about peace and love. The show's humor was playful, but one episode used its music to question the commercialization of youth culture. The lyrics mocked record executives who exploited artists, and the network did not appreciate the joke. After that broadcast, the series vanished almost overnight. Official statements blamed poor ratings, but insiders confirmed that sponsors threatened lawsuits over the song's message. The production company went bankrupt shortly after leaving behind unpaid staff and unclaimed archives. For years, the Beagles was believed lost until a few reels surfaced in an abandoned warehouse decades later. Restoration experts found the prints covered in mold, yet still playable. The rediscovered episodes revealed sharp satire hidden beneath pop melodies. Today, The Beagles stands as both comedy and cautionary tale. It captured the 60s spirit of rebellion, but paid for it with extinction. A cartoon about freedom of expression, silenced by the very industry it mocked. Number 5. Super President, 1967. Super President was one of the most controversial animated shows ever broadcast in the late 60s. It portrayed the President of the United States as a superhero who could change the molecular structure of his body to fight villains and alien threats. The idea sounded patriotic, but audiences and critics were horrified. Many saw it as propaganda during a time when the country was divided by war and distrust. Letters poured into networks accusing the show of glorifying political power and promoting blind loyalty. Religious groups condemned it for presenting a mortal man as godlike. The backlash grew until the network panicked and canceled the show after only a handful of episodes. Syndication prints were destroyed, and its name became a punchline in media history. Years later, collectors discovered that several episodes had been quietly locked in a vault under an unrelated title. Those lost reels revealed storylines involving secret conspiracies and government cover-ups far darker than anyone remembered. Super President became a case study in television excess. It tried to merge patriotism with fantasy, and instead created an unintentional satire of power itself. The fact that it disappeared so quickly only added to its myth, a relic of an era terrified by its own reflection. Number 4. Batfink, 1966. Batfink was a superhero parody that looked harmless, but carried an edge. With his metallic wings and sonar voice, the caped bat fought crime alongside his sidekick Karate. Beneath the humor hid sharp criticism of the violent tone of American media. Its villains often mimicked real political figures, and its plots echoed current headlines. By its second season, complaints arrived from advertisers claiming the show mocked law enforcement and business leaders. One episode featured a villain who controlled people through television screens, a concept networks found uncomfortable. Syndication quickly ended, and the masters vanished from circulation. Behind the scenes, producers faced pressure to tone down the satire, but creator Hal Seeger refused. When the studio closed years later, its archives were sold for scrap, and several reels of Batfink were never seen again. Fans rediscovered fragments decades later, showing that the humor was ahead of its time. Batfink's line, "Your bullets cannot harm me. My wings are like a shield of steel," became a pop culture slogan of resistance. What began as parody ended as prophecy, and its vanishing only deepened the legend. Number 3. The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, 1968. The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn blended live action with animation in a daring mix that astonished viewers. Huck, Tom, and Becky were real actors, traveling through painted cartoon worlds, meeting villains and monsters drawn by hand. The result was surreal and visually stunning, but too expensive and too strange for its own good. Parents complained that the show felt nightmarish. Critics accused it of corrupting a classic American novel. Production costs spiraled, and the network canceled it after one season. To save money, most film elements were recycled or destroyed. Behind closed doors, animators admitted that several unfinished episodes explored themes of identity and illusion, drawing uneasy parallels with racial segregation and moral hypocrisy. Those were quietly buried before airing. In later years, surviving footage inspired scholars who saw it as an early precursor to digital compositing and modern CGI. The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn disappeared from syndication, but left behind an uncanny vision of reality blending into fantasy. Its memory flickers like a half-forgotten dream, a glimpse of television daring to step outside its own frame. Number 2. The Hardy Boys, 1969. Before the live-action adaptations, the Hardy Boys appeared in an animated mystery series that fused detective adventure with pop music. Produced by Filmation, the cartoon portrayed the brothers solving crimes between musical numbers performed by their fictional band. It was energetic, youthful, and rebellious. But one storyline changed everything. An episode called The Case of the Secret Song involved political corruption and mind control through radio broadcasts. Networks feared it was a metaphor for real government operations and pulled it before airing. Nationwide, shortly afterward, the entire show was shelved. Filmation later claimed that storage costs forced them to discard negatives, yet insiders admitted the masters were deliberately misplaced. After legal pressure from powerful sponsors, only audio tracks and partial storyboards survived until collectors restored fragments in the early 2000s. The Hardy Boys cartoon became a ghost of the counterculture era, a mix of music and mystery that struck too close to the truth. Its disappearance remains one of the strangest censorship stories in children's animation history. Number 1. The Bell Science Series, 1956 to 1964. The Bell Science Series combined animation and live action to teach science through fantasy and humor. Sponsored by Bell Telephone, it featured charming animated characters explaining everything from atomic energy to communication technology. For years, it symbolized American innovation. But as public opinion turned against corporations in the mid-60s, the series fell out of favor. Critics began accusing it of being corporate propaganda. Some episodes that discuss nuclear power and environmental control were considered politically insensitive. Schools stopped screening them, and television stations replaced them with newer, safer programs. When Bell reorganized in the 70s, many of the original prints were destroyed as part of an archival purge. Historians later found fragments of lost films showing surprisingly critical moments where animators questioned unchecked technological growth. The Bell Science series ended not in disgrace, but in silence. It represented an era when education and advertisement blended seamlessly, and when that illusion collapsed, so did the show's legacy. Today it stands as the perfect symbol of vanished optimism from a world that believes science could fix everything. These lost 60s cartoons remind us that animation once walked a dangerous line between innocence and rebellion. Each vanished world carried secrets about its time, hidden behind laughter and color. Which of these forgotten shows do you wish could return? Like and subscribe if you believe lost art still deserves to be remembered before it fades forever.